Hearn, the Andrade Quigley win. Eddie, the Irish have arrived for us to whet the appetite nicely for tomorrow night.
There's nothing like having the Irish in town, is there? Great atmosphere at the weigh-in. And Quigley looks good, looks really healthy. As you know, being on site, we've started to move these weigh-ins till 9 o'clock in the morning, the official weigh-in, and then have the sort of ceremonial weigh-in here at 1 o'clock. I think it's so much more safe for the fighters. I think it's something we need to look to do all around the world. And, you get the fighters a lot happier at 1 o'clock rather than... at 9 o'clock in the morning, and Quigley looks great. It's always difficult for Demetrius to make 160. He's got great support. We're going to have a good crowd in there tomorrow night and a lot of Irish. I think it's going to be a great fight.
Just to stick with that, this was a ceremonial weigh-in. They weighed in much earlier. I was quite surprised to see Demetrius Andrade at breakfast, and then I remembered, you mentioned that it's much safer for them. It's probably better for us as well because they're a bit less grumpy at the event. Is this something you're going to try and carry on and maybe take over at the UK as well?
For sure. I mean, it's not rocket science when you think about it. The key to being able to rehydrate and be safe and healthy on fight night is having that time to do so. And again, it's not rocket science. Anyone can tell you that if you've got 4 hours more to rehydrate, you're going to be stronger, you're going to be fitter, you're going to be healthier. And you see a lot of injuries occur because of the way people make weight. And I really feel that having witnessed us doing this in the US, we need to start doing it in the UK as well. It's not difficult to do. It doesn't change anything. It just allows the fighter to hydrate for a longer period of time. And anything we can do to respect the fighter's safety and make the sport safer, I think we should look to do. And I think it's not new, by the way, in America. A lot of promoters do it, but we don't really do it in the UK. And I'm going to be speaking to Robert Smith, who I think would agree as well. And I think the fighters prefer it. They'll be making weight on the Thursday night or Friday night in some cases. Sorry, Thursday night, and then making weight again first thing in the morning. They don't want to be hanging around till 1 p.m. to get on the scales. Let's get them weighed in, let's get them refueled and make sure they can be safe in the ring on fight night.
We've spoken off camera this week about the character of Julio Cesar Martinez. You were absolutely cheesing standing beside him today. Do you think this is the fight you look at him and Arroyo and think this is the one that could really catch fire?
Yeah, I love Julio Cesar Martinez. The kid's a complete lunatic. I mean, he's 5'1" or 2, and he'd knock 7 kettles of something out of me or a load of other big lumps. And I just, when you talk about where he comes from, this kid comes from absolutely nothing in Mexico, And I just think he's so exciting to watch. And this is a really tough fight against Arroyo. Mandatory challenger, he's with Golden Boy. They fancy their chances because a lot of people know that sometimes Martinez isn't as disciplined as he should be, right? And this comes from, you need to get him out of that environment where he's from because he goes back, he makes his money. He goes back, he's like a hero in the village, probably gives it all away. And then next thing he's, rolling with these friends that he grew up with that might not have achieve what he's achieved, and he goes back to that kid from the streets. I love him to have that street mentality, but I also want to make sure that he just focuses on his preparation and becomes everything he can be, which is a pound for pound great, right? In terms of excitement, in terms of ability, he's right up there, and this is the kind of fight where he'll showcase it. We need to get him a unification at flyweight, and then he needs to move to super flyweight and look at the fights that are there for him. Estrada, Quadras, Gonzalez, Rungvisai. And we work with all of those guys. We know those lower divisions better than anyone. And he can navigate through and he can become a multi-weight world champion. Don't be surprised to see him move super fly, bantam. But this kid is, he's box office. And tomorrow night you're going to see a great fight with him and Arroyo.
When I spoke to him the other day, he told me he was very interested in the Sonny Edwards fight. Obviously, there's a narrative there. Is that a fight, if he wins on Friday night, that you'll make an offer for?
Yeah, he needs to unify. So whether it's Sonny Edwards, whether it's Dakaliam, it doesn't really matter to us. He must get that unification before he moves up. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, you're wasted. It's a bit like Kohli, and a lot of champions. They can unify, they can become undisputed. And you don't really want to move up until you've done that, at least once. So I would like to see Julio, but he's not going to make flyweight forever. So let's try and win tomorrow night and then move forward for a unification.
Announced a few fights yesterday away from this. Robbie Davis Jr. back in action. Talk to me about the fights you've announced.
Robbie Davis Jr. against Hank Lundy. Great fight. You saw obviously Hank Lundy was supposed to fight Lewis Ritson, who beat Robbie Davis Jr. recently, and the fight fell through on the day of the weigh-in, I think it was. Hank is a character. Hank is dangerous. Hank is well schooled. And Robbie Davis Jr., this is a career-defining fight for him. You know, lost against Valenzuela in a good fight, came back with a win recently. He's got this opportunity in his hometown in front of a sold-out arena on a massive show, and he's got to take it. And, you know, under Shane McGuigan, he's looked good, and this is his chance. This is a big chance for Robbie Davis Jr. in Liverpool. And Kevin Agyarko, you know, Black Thunder, really tough fight against Noe Hilarious Jr. I think he's 14-0, young American fighter. Kevin 9-0. It's a massive step up for him, and shout out to him and Paul Reddy and those guys for taking the chance. They want, you know, again, massive opportunity to fight on these kind of shows with the world tuned in on DAZN, sold out arenas. This is it. This is your chance. Go and shine. You know, there are so many great fighters out at the moment. You've got to stand out. You've got to be the one putting in a good performance. And if you don't put in a good performance, you just go back to down the queue. And if you put in a good performance, you just go up the queue. It's like Sandy Ryan the other week. You know, just one spark of, you know, ruthlessness, one spark of violence can make everyone fall in love with you. And that's why when we talk about Julio Cesar Martinez, you know every time you tune in, you're going to see it. So Robbie Davis Jr., Kevin, you know, that's their platform, that's their opportunity. And when you look at the show coming together, you know, Conor Benn against Algieri, brilliant fight. Katie Taylor against Sharapova, really tough fight, mandatory. Robbie Davis Jr. against Hank Lundy. Guerfi against Gill for the European title. Agyarko against Larios Jr. Still Joe Caldina to come as well. Peter McGrail as well. Paddy Lacey. Joe McGrail. I mean, there's so much action on that card, and it's going to be a great night in Liverpool.
Any significant movement on Usyk-Joshua too?
No. I'm planning to meet Alex Krasik. There's a lot of talks right now. You know, people talk about, obviously you've got Dillian-Whyte, you've got Usyk, you've got Usyk Fury, you've got Fury-Whyte, you've got Joshua Usyk. Like, you know, listen, I don't think they make any secret of it. Tyson Fury would like to go into the Usyk fight for the Undisputed, but unfortunately we have a contract, and Usyk's, everyone's very happy to do that fight, so that's the plan, is to make that fight. And, you know, again, we await the news from the WBC that, you know, WBC have already confirmed that Dillian-Whyte is mandatory. It's just a case of when that's going to be ordered. And, you know, as we discussed yesterday through the arbitration, we hope that's very soon.
With that in mind, have you spoken to Otto Wallen's team recently? Any plans to work with them on the back of the disappointment of him not getting that Dillian-Whyte fight?
Yeah, I said to Dimitri, you know, we felt for them when they lost that fight. We felt for Dillian-Whyte. You know, people said, oh, you know, he's pulled out with a snide injury. Absolute rubbish. You know, he was going to make a fortune in that fight. He wants to fight. He doesn't want to, you know, even now you see nothing's guaranteed before that withdrawal. It's not like he had a signed contract to fight Tyson Fury. He's still waiting now. And he wanted to fight in that fight. So, you know, I said to Dimitri, we'll keep an eye out, we'll look out, and we'll try and work with Otto Wallen to get him another opportunity.
With the injury, is Dillian-Whyte definitely not going to fight before Tyson Fury?
I mean, obviously depends on when that's called. We don't know. Nothing's a given. You know, we hope that if the right thing is done and things go the way we believe they're going to go, his next fight will be Tyson Fury. If it's not for any reason, yeah, he'll fight again when he's fit and ready to do so, which would be probably February or March next year. So all the focus for Dillian-Whyte is to fight for Tyson Fury, and that's the fight that should happen. So, you know, we await further news.
A couple other things with the heavyweight theme. What's the latest with Filip Hrgović?
He's looks like he's going to fight on the Haney Diaz card, actually. I mean, again, like, you're going down this IBF, people talk about, you know, getting opportunities. There is an opportunity for a heavyweight in the top 10, top 15 of the IBF to fight Filip Hrgović to become mandatory for Alexander Usyk, right? And probably to become mandatory for Anthony Joshua. It's a 65-35 split with the IBF. Yet no one is coming forward and accepting that fight with Filip Hrgović. It's so frustrating. So again, we need to get him out. Looking at December 4th possibly, speaking to Callie Sowland to confirm that, and then we go again down the rankings. But we're not prepared to just see Filip just sit on the sideline. And it's so frustrating to get him the big fights. And we're hoping that someone believes they can beat him and someone will take that opportunity.
Had a heavyweight pay-per-view announced yesterday, Charles Martin and Luis Ortiz. I think it was $39.99 it's going to be. Thoughts?
Madness. Total madness. I mean, Luis Ortiz against Charles Martin. You know, and they're both good fighters. Charles Martin is underrated. AJ smashed him to pieces and then everyone just jumped on the bandwagon. He's come back well. He's a good fighter. And Luis Ortiz, you know, he's really getting on. But he's a good fighter. But I don't understand the model, really. It's sort of, I don't want to say it, but kind of reeks of desperation a little bit. I don't see the need to do that fight on pay-per-view. And even by reducing the price point, I don't think with pay-per-view, I don't really agree that price points should be, because what you're saying is this is not a very good pay-per-view, so we've made it cheaper. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is half the price of our last pay-per-view because it's half as good. As a customer, why would you want to buy a product that's half as good for, I don't know. It's just strange. There must be a reason behind it, obviously. You know, sometimes when you're a promoter, you have your schedule of dates and you can run out of dates, or you need to make another fight that maybe doesn't work within the schedule that you've got. So you have to do something out of the ordinary. And in that case, it's out of the ordinary. But, you know, if it's $40 and it's probably going to do 20,000 buys, you know, it's not a lot of money. You're talking about $800,000 worth of revenue. And actually, that's not the promoter's cut. Call it $500,000 of revenue. Surely you'd be better off to take guaranteed money from a broadcaster. But it's weird. It's weird, but it's not my business. And, you know, we focus on our business, which right now, as I put out on my Instagram earlier, the upcoming schedule is unrivaled. There is no schedule in the world like DAZN. And you know, people talk about another one there, $40. This weekend you've got Crawford against Porter, which is gonna flop, and it's $80 or whatever it is, $70. Then you've got Tank in 10 days or 2 weeks, whatever it is. That's $70. Then you got Tommy Fury against Jake Paul. That's $70. Yet we're out here with this unbelievable product, unbelievable value for money, and we're seeing in America the mindset of fight fans, because of the subscription numbers and the way people are staying with the platform. They love it, and they realise now DAZN is unparalleled rival for money against anybody. And it's exciting times, because I just feel like the more pay-per-views there are, actually, the better it is for us.
You've got not only Teofimo Lopez, George Kambosos, but then Haney Diaz as well. And I believe I heard somewhere that Teofimo Lopez will be at the Haney fight. He might possibly be even commentating of some sort if he wins that fight. Yeah. If they both come through, how significant is that fight for DAZN in this part of the world?
Look, I mean, firstly, let's look at those 2 individual weeks for DAZN. You know, next week you've got one of the biggest stars in boxing, Teofimo Lopez, the guy who dethroned Vasily Lomachenko, who was God, you know, pound for pound, number 1 or 2. Make the defence of his world titles against Kambosos. We're very honoured and pleased and lucky to have not just that fight, but Teofimo on the DAZN platform. The week after, you have what I feel is the best lightweight in the world, Devin Haney, in a really tough fight against Jojo Diaz. And, you know, there's no secret. In my opinion, Bob Arum does not want Teofimo Lopez against Devin Haney, right? I think he's made that clear to Teofimo Lopez's dad, actually. Teofimo Lopez's dad just wants the Devin Haney fight. Devin Haney just wants the Teofimo Lopez fight, right? So we just got to be aggressive in our approach, and everyone the fighters need to get what they deserve. This is the key here. It's not about networks. It's not about promoters. It's not about ego. It's not about the fighters. They're our bosses. I keep saying it. You know, I said it in front of Teofimo Lopez's dad. We work off instructions, right? We guide the career of these fighters, but we're told what to do. We can give our opinion, but ultimately, when you've got 2 guys that want to fight in just one of the best fights in boxing, let it happen. We can do it on ESPN. We can do it on DAZN. We can do it on both. I don't know. But there doesn't seem to be any desire from Top Rank to make that fight. Maybe Bob knows how good Devin Haney is. I don't know. But at the same time, that's where Teofimo Lopez Sr. and Teofimo Lopez have got to come out and say, no. Make that fight. You work for me. Now do as you're told and make the fight. And if Devin Haney said that to me, I'll go and do it. Because again, I go back to the fact, he's my boss. I work for Devin Haney. My job is to deliver for him. And I will deliver for him. But I can't if people will block it or they don't want to take the fight. Teofimo wants that fight. His dad wants that fight. Let's all do our jobs and make that happen. But we're sitting here, you know, with 2-week run. Kambosos could be watching this interview going, you cheeky motherfucker. I'm going to smash him next week at the Garden, and I'm going to make history for Australian boxing. And then Jojo Diaz is thinking, yeah? So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's deal with the huge 2 weeks live on DAZN. And if Teofimo comes through, if Devin comes through, let's get it made.
You said you feel like Top Rank necessarily don't want to make that fight. If it was maybe a Josh Taylor fight they preferred, we had Josh on our channel yesterday, and I think his words were, Teofimo's building himself off my name, he can F off, I'm not going to fight him. Do you think that will make them a bit more willing to come to the table for a fight like this?
I don't see as why Teofimo is living off Josh Taylor's name. I mean, they've got nothing to do with each other. Like, Josh Taylor is brilliant. You know, he's come over, he's won the belts, come to the US, beat Ramirez. But let's just give Teofimo his credit. He went and he won a world title, and rather than saying, let me have a couple of defences first, which I would have thought was a good idea, went straight into Lomachenko and beat Lomachenko. Teofimo's win is much, much more impressive and of a higher standing than Josh Taylor's win over Ramirez. But don't worry about it. They're both brilliant fighters. But you have to go back to it's what the fighter wants, right? And if Teofimo and his dad walk away from the opportunity to fight Devin Haney, this is much bigger than this now. This is pride, yeah? This is bragging rights. This is Teofimo and Devin. This is Teofimo Senior and Bill Haney, right? You back out of this fight, you will never live this down. So they can't fight anyone else now because it's too much on the line. So I love the spot, but there's no guarantee both will win. So ask me on December the 5th, and I will tell you now, if you don't fight Devin Haney, you've gone back on your word. And Devin, if you don't fight Teofimo, you've gone back on your word, because we shook on it. We all agreed. This is the fight. Yeah? And I believe in the word of Teofimo and his dad, and I certainly believe in the word of Devin Haney and Bill Haney. So I'm really confident that fight gets made. But there is no guarantee they both win. You know, in my opinion, on paper, Devin has a tougher fight than Teofimo. It's no disrespect to Kambosos. He's got to prove that he's of that level. Jojo's proved that he's a two-weight world champion. But there is no backing out of that fight. No backing out.
Yeah, I think we learned in Sheffield last week that there's no guarantees in boxing. Eddie, I want to ask about Keyshawn Davis. Obviously, I think he made his pro debut on the Canelo Yildirim card. You told us that, you know, he was just sort of seeing what was out there and having a look. I'm guessing it was a case of everyone put their cards on the table and it was Top Rank that was for him.
Yeah, we made him an offer. They come back to us and, you know, we were made aware of Top Rank's offer and basically were told that if we matched it, we got him. And I just thought it was too much money, to be honest. You know, sometimes, and this goes for, sometimes we'll pay more money than someone thought that a fighter was worth, and everyone's got their opinion and value of a fighter. Keyshawn's a brilliant fighter, and I like the kid personally. I think he's a great young man. But, you know, we saw the numbers and thought, no, not for us. And that goes for, you know, deals for other Olympians, and we'll have our opinion of that fighter and the value of that fighter. And on this case, I thought it was too much money. But that said, he's a brilliant fighter, and I wish him all the best.
Just to pick that back up, you touched on Crawford-Porter briefly before. You said you think it's going to be a pay-per-view flop, the fight itself, though. How do you see it going?
Look, flop has it. It's a really good fight. I can't tell you it's not. But, you know, Tim Bradley spoke fantastically yesterday. He said this is not a way to sell a pay-per-view fight. You've got two guys that don't really push fights, two guys that quite like each other, two guys that have a huge amount of respect for each other. It doesn't mean it's not a great fight. But I don't see it doing 150,000 buys. And when you look at the purses for the fighters and you look at the numbers, that someone is taking a disgusting bath on that fight. I don't know who. And good luck to the fighters. And again, I'm not criticising the fight because I think it's a really good fight. But coming off the back of Canelo Alvarez, a couple of weeks ago, you've just spent $80. Are you going to spend $70 on Crawford-Porter? I mean, unless you work, you know, for a hedge fund, I just don't see how this market can keep sustaining bi-weekly pay-per-views for that kind of money. It astonishes me. And again, every now and again, one is going to pay the price. And I think Crawford-Porter is the one that will pay the price.
Talking about all these pay-per-views kind of crammed into the US schedule at the minute, obviously you and I spoke about the survey that went out from DAZN about the possibility of them going into the pay-per-view market. With that in mind and how many there is out there right now, what level of fight would it take for DAZN to venture into the pay-per-view market?
It would take a fight that is like pay-per-view regardless, no arguments. I mean, what you're seeing, you know, coming up obviously with Ben Algieri and Taylor Sharapova and that card, particularly Chisora Parker and, you know, the card in Manchester, which 5 months ago was a pay-per-view on Sky. This rematch would be a pay-per-view on Sky, whether you like it or not. Trust me, I was there for a long time. So it has to be a pay-per-view that is out of the ordinary, and that comes with an Anthony Joshua fight. You know, that comes with a Fury-Whyte fight. That comes with the whole thing is, and I go back to pay-per-view functionality. This is not, DAZN have decided that 5 months in we're going to start doing pay-per-views. This is to get into the conversation of those kind of fights. That's all. So our aim is all the pay-per-views, and I've said it a million times before, that you consistently moaned about, you maybe, I don't know, once when you weren't working with Boxing Social, are no longer on pay-per-view. Right? And that's good, because the way that we've gone about that strategy has also probably made them not do Eubank Williams on pay-per-view, which is actually good for the fight fan. But I also, at the same time, I understand if fights are pay-per-view, because sometimes you can't pay for those fights with the rights fees from your broadcaster. And that's why those fights were always pay-per-view, because they were too expensive to put on a normal Saturday night fight night. Now, the good news is we have the budget to make sure that, I know White against Weiland didn't take place, but the White against Povetkin, the Chisora against Parker, these kind of nights, whether it's Ben against Broner, I don't know, are part of the DAZN schedule. Teofimo against Kambosos. I mean, with the way that the US market is right now, no one would be shocked to see Teofimo against Kambosos as pay-per-view, right? Coming off his victory. I don't think it is, but I don't think Crawford-Porter's pay-per-view. I don't think Ortiz against Charles Martin's pay-per-view. I don't think Tank against Isaac Cruz is pay-per-view. But I understand the business. So from our point of view, with our business, it's not, let's hurry up and do a pay-per-view. It's being able to get into the conversation of the mega fights that happen once, twice a year, and be able to stage those fights. And, fighters do still have it in their mindset that I want to be a pay-per-view fighter. You don't need to necessarily be one now with the DAZN model. But if you want to be and you become that big, like AJ, we can also do that for you. And guess what? We're not having to pay a supplier to hold that show and to run that show. We do it on our own platform. And, it's just about involvement. But nothing changes in the mindset of us delivering, like I said, unparalleled value for money for subscribers.
We're still waiting to hear where Usyk-Joshua 2 would land in the UK. If it is DAZN, would that be a pay-per-view?
Yes. Yeah, I would think so. Yeah. But look, I think the front runner, it's very likely that we'll do a deal with Sky for Anthony Joshua. They've been a great partner for him. They're a brilliant pay-per-view model on Sky. And of course, he's talking to everyone, but maybe they're front runner, and we'll discuss that as a team and make a decision whether he re-signs with them. And that comes down to AJ and Freddie and me and the whole team to decide what's best for AJ. And they're a brilliant pay-per-view platform. So, but a fight like that, yes, and Fury against AJ, yeah, they're the kind of fights where, I never said pay-per-view is dead. I just believe that it was my opportunity to take fights off pay-per-view that you moaned about for years. But certain fights will always remain on pay-per-view in the UK. And unless someone wants to come in with, billions, which is possible, to stop that from happening. So, but that's fine. If it's a one-off pay-per-view and it's a mega fight, I don't think people moan. I was just getting the moans from the fights that people believe shouldn't be on pay-per-view. Now they're not. So hopefully they appreciate that, and hopefully they're happy with that model.
Last one before I let you go, Eddie. I saw Conor Benn being on FaceTime to Amir Khan. Yeah. Confident we will see that fight at some point?
I just love the fight. I love the fight. I mean, look, when Amir came to me about Khan Brook, I still think that's a really good fight, but it doesn't excite me like Conor Benn against Amir Khan. Conor Benn is the young, what's the right word? Stud of British boxing right now. We see it. The kid's a superstar, right? His numbers are through the roof. People love him. Of course, his backstory, with his daddy, it's perfect. And it's not like this young man, he's 31, 32, 33 years of age. This young kid's just starting. This is someone that we can get on the journey with. And now he's got to beat Chris Algieri in a tough fight. So I just feel that Amir Khan against Conor Benn, it's a brilliant fight. The narrative, the crossroads. You've got a British boxing legend in Amir Khan, and you've got a young stud in Conor Benn. And I just feel with a Kell Brook fight, when you're making a fight and you have to put your nuts on the line financially, you have to buy in to that fight. Do you know what I mean? You have to want to see that fight. And when I had conversations with those guys, it just didn't inspire me to make that fight. Years ago, it was such a great fight because you had two guys in their prime, one world champion at the time with Kell. They hated each other. And now they don't. They just don't. They just want to get together and make a few quid, and I don't blame them for that. And people will watch. But Conor just wants to put it on the line. I just see a young, hungry lion. He's not bothered about the money. He just wants to fight Amir Khan. But Amir doesn't want to fight these young lions. He doesn't. Ask Amir about Conor Benn. Ask him about Virgil Ortiz. Ask him about boot tennis. Oh, you know. But I would love to make the fight. And if he wants it, we'll make him a huge offer for that fight. But he would rather fight Kell Brook. That's the reality of the situation. Even for the same money, he'd rather fight Kell Brook because he just knows it's not. It's a friendly. And listen, they'll both put it on the line, but it's like, come on, let's go and bow out with a few quid, rather than Conor Benn who goes, just give it to me, just give it to me. I want it all. And that's what inspires me to make a fight, and I'd put the money up for that fight.
Eddie Hearn, thank you for speaking to Boxing Social. See you on Fight Night.